What's up, shoemakers? You're welcome back to Boot Behavior. Today we are creating the mean form. This is Forme Bespoke, by the way, reporting live from the beautiful but often hectic city of Lagos. In the last video, we created this design of a derby boot, so we are continuing in our quest of making a boot out of the pattern design that we created. So, having sketched the design of a derby shoe on the last, the next thing is to tear out the both sides. We take both sides of the last, so we're going to tear out the tape from the last and use that to create, like we said earlier, what is known as a mean form. So I tear out the lateral side or the outside part of the tape from the last, and then as much as possible, as much as I can, try to lie it flat on a piece of paper. So I do that by running my fingers along the line of force area, cut a few notches at the tip as well as at the heel so that it's able to lie flush, and then use a straight edge to try to lie it flat as much as possible. Of course, it's not possible to have it lie flat. You would have a few wrinkles here and there, but it's better to have many small wrinkles than to have one major wrinkle. So if you find that you have one major wrinkle, you did it wrong. So we do the same for the inside part of the last, also known as the medial side. So I run my finger along the line of force area, cut a few notches at the tip and at the heel, and then use a straight edge to try to flatten it out on this piece of paper. So easy peasy up till this point. The next thing we're going to do is that we're going to try to mark out all of those cardinal points that we found by our calculations when we designed on the last. So this is the vamp line, that's the instep. At the back right there is the counterpoint as well as the back height. So mark all of that out on the medial side. So on the lateral side, I do the same, the vamp line, which connects the vamp point and the ball, and then the instep and all of the other major points. Then we cut out these things. These things that we are cutting out, by the way, the technical name for them is the last copies. They are just copies of the both parts of the last, and they represent in a two-dimensional shape, in a two-dimensional form, the three-dimensional. They embody the dimensions of a three-dimensional surface, which is the last. I nearly beat my tongue right there. So let's continue. So cut out the lateral side, cut out all of the unneeded parts. So having cut that out, I will, do a few work on the medial side before I continue. So this is the medial side and that's the lateral side, which of course contained the sketch that we did. So this is how we came off the lateral side, medial side. Now I'll cut a notch on the instep, a notch on the vamp point, a notch at the medial side ball, and a notch at the counterpoint. So those points, those notches that I cut will aid me as I flip over the medial side and trace it out on a flat piece of paper. Make sure that you have enough paper to contain all of the parts of the last copy. Then I'll place the counterpoint of the lateral side on the counterpoint of the medial side, and the tip of the lateral side on the tip of the medial side that I just traced out, and then trace out the lateral side on top of the medial side. You will notice that they don't lie on exactly the same spot at all areas. The places where you have differentials, you divide into two and use dotted lines to just cut them out. It's an average. It's a way of getting an average between the dimensions of the lateral side as against the dimensions of the medial side. This last is fairly symmetrical, so the differences are not very pronounced. But when you have asymmetrical last, the differences can actually be very pronounced. At the underside, otherwise known as the feather edge, there is no need to find the mean, no need to find the differentials, just take the longer of the two lines. And at the back also, you will need to find the differential. On top, you find the differential as well. And then this thing that we have here and now is the mean form. There are some points that I forgot to mark in. The ball, the short heel point that you see over there, so I've just marked that in. And then also I forgot to mark in the lateral side vamp line, so I'm just going to go ahead and mark that in lateral side ball point. So I'll simply just draw in the lateral side vamp line on this mean form, draw in the medial side vamp line, and then find the middle between the two of them, and that will now therefore form my mean form's new vamp line, and that's the vamp line that I'm going to be working with. So this is the lateral side on where we made the design. If I wanted to be lazy, I could just go ahead and trace in the design lines on this mean form, but I'm not going to do that because I want to revise that formula with you. And then also I want to be able to save this mean form so that I don't have to be saving pattern pieces. I can just save my mean form, and every time that I need to make any design, I will just bring out my mean form and work with it. So now let's divide the vamp line of this mean form into two. I think it came to about 8.5 cm, so dividing it into two comes to 4.25. Then we draw the quarter line by connecting the counterpoint to that middle point on the vamp line. If we add 1 cm to the counterpoint, we will have our back height. And then I said I don't want to design on this mean form. So in order to be able to save my mean form for storage, I will leave it alone and just trace it out on a fresh piece of paper from where I'm going to continue with my design. Let me catch my breath. Let's get back. So I'll trace my mean form on my piece of paper. So this is me walking straight from the mean form. This is actually what I call off-last shoe design. So all the cardinal points are marked in. So this is that short heel point. I'll draw 90 degrees as much as I can to the quarter line. So that point where it touches the quarter line is where the remainder of the opening of my shoe is going to continue. But before that, let's draw a straight line from the vamp point to the tip of this mean form, and then from the vamp line to the instep point. So that's done. Then, like I said before, if we draw a line from the instep to the point where that short heel line touches the quarter line, that is the remainder of the opening of the shoe. And if we draw a line from the back height to the middle point on the vamp line to the point where it touches the beginning point of the opening of our shoe, we already have the rest of the lines of the opening of the shoe that we can curve in with a curve like so. If you have French curves, now is the time to use it. My French curve is not anywhere near, so I'll just use freehand. So we remember when we were doing the formula, we said that typically your cap toe should be about 1/4 of the standard last length. So that's the calculation I did right there. Standard last length was 34, so 1/4 came to 8.5 cm. So I marked in 8.5 cm. And rather than draw a curve for this cap toe, I just want to experiment something and see how it comes out. So I'll use a 90 degrees angle from the center line. So my capto is done. Remember I told you that I couldn't find where my French curve is, so I'll just use my coffee cup to draw in the curve. So let's look for the tongue line. The width of the tongue, when we did our design, we said the width of the tongue comes to about 1/8 of the standard last length. Standard last length, of course, is 34. And if 1/4 of the standard last length is 8.5, it tells us immediately that 1/8 of the standard last length is 4.25. So from the instep, we will mark 4.25 cm on that tongue line. 4.25 cm, we mark it in like so. And then we are going to draw a mark about 0.5 cm or 50 millimeters beneath the middle of our vamp line. And then if we join those 2 points, we have the tongue of our derby. Much like what you will do if you were trying to calculate the tongue of a loafer's shoe. If you haven't seen my videos on loafer's shoes, these things were very well explained in detail in video after video. So the tongue of this derby we have now found. Let's just curve in the facing like that. I'll use something a little bit more regular too. Okay, let me just use my coffee cup to curve in the facing of the derby around that side. Don't worry, by the time I remove the cup, you would see what exactly I'm doing. So you see I'm curving that in like so. So we have our tongue, we have our capto drawn in, we have our top line, which is the opening of the shoe, drawn in. So the rest thing we are going to do is to find the facing of the shoe. So remember that I said I typically do that by using the width of my flexible tape, just about 1 cm or 1.25 cm. So from there, I mark that point and then draw 90 degrees from that point. So the point where it touches the quarter line is where I'll start calculating the this line on the derby. So I said I will typically use about 1/5 of the standard last length. So standard last length divided by 5 came to about 6.8 or so, just shy of 7 cm. So I mark it on the quarter line like so, and then curve in that from that point to the point where the short heel line starts. I noticed that, that 6.7 or 8 cm was quite too elongated. So I used another proportion of the standard last length. Like if you look at the design that we have, you find that the distance between the top line and that facing there was much more than we had on our sketch. So rather than use 1/5, I would use 1/6. So that came to about 5.6. So I mark 5.6. So this is 1/6 of the standard last length. So I told you that this my method of shoe design makes every part or almost every part of the shoe a proportion of the standard last length. So if I come across anything that doesn't really work and is pleasing to my eye, I just find another proportion of the standard last length. So this looks more like what I want. So 1/6 of the standard last length looks a little bit better. So I draw that in. So this right here is the quarter and facing of my shoe. So that is the face of the facing, and the rest of the quarter has been drawn. If you take a look at this, you would see that the the derby shoe is almost complete. So we said that what we are doing in creating our boot is to first of all create a derby shoe, and then using that derby shoe converting it to a boot. So we finished almost everything that is related to this derby shoe. So in the next video, we're actually going to be converting this derby shoe into a boot. To finish it off, let's mark in the eyelets. So I use about 1.2 cm away from the center line, and also equally space the eyelets by 1.2 cm from each other. So you see that there. So I mark comes to about if you use my 1.2 cm equidistance of the eyelet holes from each other, you would usually average about 5 eyelet holes. So I've marked in my eyelet holes. I was going to punch it, but I said, nah, let's leave it alone since we are still going to do the boots. So your assignment here on in is to create your own derby shoe pattern and submit it in class. If you have any questions, as always, put it in the comment section. I'll also put it in the Telegram group, and we will address them in due course. It's been a pleasure of mine to shoot these videos. I hope they are very helpful to you. Know that the main thing involved here is making every part of the pattern a proportion of the standard last length. So thank you very much for sticking on till this point. Have a lovely time. God bless you. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. See you on the next video.